Nobody asks children what they want when families fall apart. They absorb it all. The arguments behind closed doors, the silences at dinner tables that have too much food and not enough warmth. The way two people can share a bed for 20 years and make a child feel more alone than if they had simply told the truth. Today I want to show you two timelines. The same family, one decision made differently. I want to show you what that single decision looks like inside the mind of the child 30 years later. The wound is not always the divorce. Sometimes it is the marriage, the one you watch survive at the cost of everything else. The house is intact, the address never changes. From the outside, the family looks like what families are supposed to look like, not in the obvious ways. In the quiet, persistent ways nobody warned you were connected. The way you trust people, the way you fight, the way you leave, the way you stay when you should go. The way you love someone and simultaneously begin building the exit before they can. In timeline A, the house is intact, and the silence inside it has been growing for years. They learn that love is not something you feel, it is something you endure. A performance of staying, regardless of whether staying is good for anyone. They develop an extraordinary, exhausting sensitivity to tension, a radar calibrated so precisely that, as an adult, they can detect a shift in a partner's mood from the sound of a door closing. They grow up never having seen two people fight well and repair something that was broken. Two people occupying the same physical space while living in entirely separate emotional worlds. They started performing a version of themselves that caused the least amount of trouble in the specific atmosphere of that house. They became extraordinarily good, helpful, low maintenance. The child who never made things worse. They grew up believing the alternative to conflict is silence. Not resolution, silence. Every holiday, someone brought out the camera, and every holiday the family assembled into the shape of happiness. Every morning they carried it. Into school, into friendships, into every room they entered. Their friendships had a specific shape. They were always the helper, the fixer, the one who made things easier for everyone else. Their first serious relationship felt like coming home, because it was. It was exactly the emotional temperature of the house they grew up in. 2 years in, you defend it. To your friends who are carefully trying to say something. When conflict arrived, they did one of two things: shut down completely, or catastrophized. Or they catastrophized. Because the only model of unresolved conflict they ever had ended in a marriage that became a museum of two people's unhappiness. They need constant reassurance not because they are weak, but because love, to them, became synonymous with not being abandoned. They ask, "Are we okay?" And when the answer is yes, it helps for approximately 40 minutes. Their self-worth was built around being needed, around being the person who keeps things together. They wake up and something specific is gone. Not happiness, something smaller, their instincts. They have no idea they learned it. In a house where nothing dramatic ever happened. In the silence between two people who stayed for them. Two adults sit down with their child and tell them something true. The child cries. Of course they do. That pain is real. I am not going to minimize it. There is a schedule. 2 homes, 2 different sets of rules and rhythms. They watched their mother become a person outside the role of wife. They watched their father develop patience and cooking skills and Saturday morning habits that belonged entirely to him. They watched 2 people make a painful decision because it was the honest one, and they watched both of them survive it. They had a template, imperfect, painful, for what it looks like to choose truth over preservation. Their attachment style carries its own complications, a specific fear that good things end. In their relationship, when something difficult needs to be said, they say it. Their self-worth is not built on being needed. It is built on being known. It is not the structure of the family that shapes the child. It is the quality of the emotional environment inside the structure. Children are some of the most sophisticated emotional readers on the planet. They know when the piece is performed. The wound lives in the body for decades. It shows up as the person who flinches when a partner raises their voice. They needed to relearn what silence means. In their childhood home, silence was the sound of 2 people who had stopped trying. The body learned before the mind had tools to examine it, and it outlasts reason by decades. You may be building relationships that replicate the exact emotional temperature of the home you grew up in. Not because that temperature was good, but because it is familiar. Anxious attachment is not a personality trait. It is a learned response to a specific early environment. Self-worth built around performance is not self-worth. It is audition, and every day in an intimate relationship becomes another audition. It is the quality of the emotional environment, not the structure that determines outcomes for children. The honest separation gave the child something the intact, unhappy marriage never could: a model for choosing truth over comfort. Generational patterns do not announce themselves. They simply run. Your parents learned to love from people who also didn't know how, and those people learned from people before them. Some of these instructions were written before you were born, and decisions made by people who loved imperfectly and meant well, and then one day you see it in your own child. The radar, the shrinking, the carefully chosen silence. There is always someone in the family who decides the pattern stops here. That decision is never easy. It is always worth it. I once knew someone deeply committed to the idea that keeping things intact was the same as keeping things healthy, who spent years constructing a domestic situation that looked exactly like what a family should look like. Their child grew up with everything that was supposed to matter, everything except the one thing that does. Watching two people genuinely choose each other. You may be staying in something that no longer serves you because your entire model of love is built on staying. Or you may be leaving things prematurely because your entire model of love is built on the knowledge that things end. You are building relationships that replicate the emotional temperature of the home you grew up in. The familiar feels like safety, even when it is anything but. You learn that silence after conflict is what peace looks like. You have been producing that silence in every relationship since. They choose partners who need them, because being needed is the only form of love they were ever taught to receive. They spent their whole life being useful enough to be kept. Nobody ever told them that simply existing was sufficient. Right now, in houses across every city in the world, children are sitting at the tops of staircases and learning. The pattern runs until it is named, and naming it is the beginning of the only freedom that actually exists. Stop asking, did my parents' marriage or divorce damage me? Start asking, what did I learn about love in that house? And is that learning still serving me? You are not doing this to blame them. You are doing this to understand yourself. Stop saying I wasted those years. Start saying, those years happened and they contain information I have not yet finished extracting. There are specific environments where the old version of you is required. See them clearly. Some of the rooms are relationships, the ones that feel most like home because they match the original temperature. Some of the rooms are friendships, the ones where the version of you that was built in the original house is the version everyone expects. The pattern you are carrying was learned by a specific child with specific resources. You are not that child. You have tools the original child did not have, including, right now, the language to name what was previously nameless. The mind can understand something years before the body believes it. Give the body time. You are allowed to write new instructions. That is not betrayal. That is exactly what they were raising you to do. I spent time in an emotional environment that wrote instructions for me. I am not finished revising them. I am also not waiting to begin my life until the revision is complete. The next time someone implies your history reflects something permanent about who you are, you say, what happened to me revealed my capacity to survive. It did not reveal the limits of who I am. You deserve a relationship where being fully yourself is not an act of courage. It is simply how Tuesday feels. If you have children or will have them, the most important thing you can give them is not a perfect family. It is an honest one. Understanding your parents' patterns does not require you to condemn them. They also learned from someone. The child in both timelines deserved the same thing, not a perfect family. Just two adults honest enough to give them a real model of love. This is not about your parents. This is about a system that teaches people that any connection is preferable to the terror of being unchosen. We reward the staying with words like committed and loyal and patient, as if these words lose their value entirely when what is being endured is simply harmful. You followed an instruction that was never going to lead somewhere good, and you followed it because no one gave you another one. You are still that child, and you are also the adult who can finally give them what they needed. Not a perfect family, not a painless childhood, just the truth, told with love, in a language that didn't require the child to decode it alone. Every generation carries what the previous one was unable to put down. Until someone decides to examine the load, you can honor the people who raised you and refuse to repeat what they gave you. Both things are true simultaneously. The question now is not whether your parents made the right choice. It is what you are going to do with the person you already are. Choosing is not a dramatic moment. It is a Tuesday afternoon decision to do the harder thing. Both timelines happened. Both cost something real. And both of them brought you here to this moment where you are finally asking the right question. The child at the top of the stairs is still there, They are waiting for the adult you became to come and tell them what you know now. This is not a video about healing. Healing implies the wound goes away. This is about understanding, which means the wound stays, but it stops running the show. The relationship you build from here does not have to look like the one you came from. What you pass forward is not determined by what was passed to you. It is determined by how clearly you were willing to look at it. The parents who stayed also loved their children. The parents who left also loved their children. Love was never the question. Honesty was always the question. You are permitted to understand your childhood without condemning the people who gave it to you. And you are permitted to build something different without feeling like a traitor. Everything that was handed to you can be held differently, or set down, or passed forward transformed. The bravest thing you can do is look clearly at the house you came from and still decide who you want to be. You are still that child, and the story is still being written. And what you write next, that is entirely, completely, irreversibly yours.